It was just past midnight when a soft knock came at my front door. The kind of knock that immediately wakes you up with a little jolt, not threatening, but carrying urgency. I blinked against the dim light in my living room and called out, "Who's there?" "It's me, Lily," came the hesitant voice. But when I opened the door, it wasn't my niece. It was my nephew Thomas, my sister's son, just turned 25, looking disheveled, carrying nothing but a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. "Thomas? What on earth?" I said, stepping aside to let him in. The night air was cool, carrying a faint scent of rain that had fallen earlier. I could see the exhaustion etched into his face, and something about the way he hesitated before entering made my heart tighten. He shuffled inside, dropping his bag by the door. "I didn't know who else to call," he murmured, his voice low. I need help." We settled in my small, warmly lit kitchen, the faint ticking of the clock filling the silence. I offered him tea, and he accepted without a word. I noticed the subtle tremor in his hands as he cradled the mug, as if it were a lifeline. "Thomas, talk to me. What's going on?" I asked gently, resting my hands on the table. He looked up, his eyes reflecting a storm I didn't yet understand. He swallowed hard, and then the words began to spill out in fits and starts. I've been keeping something from everyone. I didn't know how to say it, but I can't hide it anymore." I leaned in closer, the warmth of the kitchen and the soft hum of the refrigerator wrapping around us. The world outside felt distant, unimportant, as if the house existed solely for this moment. "Whatever it is, you can tell me," I said. Thomas' voice cracked slightly, and he looked away, biting his lip. I've been struggling with who I really am. I've been living in a way that it's not me. And tonight, everything came to a head. I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. It was an instinctive gesture, a promise that he wasn't alone. "You're safe here," I whispered. "Tell me everything." He took a deep breath, eyes glistening. "I think I'm in love with someone I didn't expect, someone I never imagined could feel this way about me, and I didn't know how to face it or how to face myself." The confession hung in the air, and for a moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat. It wasn't shocking in the way you might think. It was human, tender, and real. The kind of revelation that makes you pause, not because it's unbelievable, but because it matters. We sat there, the kitchen light casting soft shadows on the walls, and I realized just how deeply someone can fear being misunderstood. And in that fear, the quiet courage it takes to reach out. "Thomas," I said gently, squeezing his hand, "you're brave for telling me. That's all I need to know right now. You don't have to face this alone." The tears came slowly, silently, but I could feel the weight lifting from his shoulders. That night, in the quiet of my kitchen, we didn't solve everything. But a bridge had been built, a fragile, vital connection that neither of us had expected, but both desperately needed. And as I poured us another cup of tea, I couldn't help but wonder where this night, this confession, would take us. The night stretched on like a quiet river, moving slowly but carrying a current I couldn't see. Thomas and I sat together at the kitchen table, the soft light spilling across the worn wood and casting gentle shadows over our faces. Outside, the world was silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind, a reminder that life continued beyond this tiny bubble of honesty and vulnerability. After a while, Thomas leaned back in his chair, finally seeming to relax a fraction. His hands, once trembling over the tea mug, now rested in his lap. "I've been holding on to this for so long," he said softly, "because I didn't want anyone to think less of me, or of my family." His eyes flickered to mine, a mix of fear and hope. "I didn't know if you'd understand." I shook my head gently, offering a small smile. "I'm listening, Thomas. And I do understand more than you might think. Sometimes just saying it out loud is the hardest part. Everything else, figuring it out, living it, it comes after that. He let out a shaky laugh, almost a sigh. It's just confusing. I thought I knew myself, and then suddenly I don't. I don't know what to do, who to tell, or even how to feel sometimes. I've been walking around like a stranger in my own life. I reached across the table and rested my hand over his again. That feeling? It's normal. It's human. But the part that matters is that you're facing it now, instead of hiding. That's courage, Thomas. Real courage. There was a pause, a quiet wait in the room that neither of us wanted to disturb. Then, almost hesitantly, Thomas spoke again. I think part of why I came here tonight is because I needed to see a familiar face. Someone who knows me and still cares. His voice cracked on the last word, and I could feel the intensity of his need for connection. I squeezed his hand. I care, Thomas. You've always mattered to me, and nothing, absolutely nothing, can change that. He looked down, fiddling with the edge of his sleeve. There's more, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I've been seeing someone, and it's not just a crush. It's deeper than that. I've never felt like this before, and I didn't expect it, not at all. I didn't know it was possible for someone like me to feel this way about someone like them. The weight of the confession settled over us like the soft warmth of a blanket. I could see him grappling with fear, hope, and desire all at once, and my heart went out to him. It's okay to feel deeply, I said. It's okay to be surprised by love. That doesn't make it wrong. It makes it real. For a moment, Thomas simply let himself breathe, his shoulders loosening as if he had been carrying the world, and finally set it down. The kitchen smelled faintly of tea and the remnants of rain outside, a quiet sanctuary from the storm he'd been facing alone. I didn't know who else to tell, he admitted, finally meeting my gaze. I was afraid of being judged, of being pushed away. But you make me feel like I can be myself, even the parts I don't understand yet. The honesty in his words struck me. I realized in that moment how rare it was to witness someone so completely vulnerable and human, and how much trust it took to share that side of themselves. Thomas, I said softly, you can always be yourself here. That's never going to change. We'll figure this out together, step by step, at your pace. He nodded slowly, a flicker of relief in his eyes, and in the quiet intimacy of that night, I sensed the start of something fragile but profoundly meaningful, not just for him, but for both of us. The bond we shared had deepened, strengthened by trust and empathy, and for the first time in weeks, Thomas allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone in the journey ahead. Morning came quietly, slipping through the curtains in soft, golden streams. The night had been long, full of confessions and trembling honesty, but the sunlight felt like a promise, like the world hadn't ended, and that maybe, just maybe, it could be a little brighter today. Thomas was still at my kitchen table, a blanket draped over his shoulders, eyes heavy with sleep but somehow lighter with relief. He sipped slowly from his mug, staring into the steam as if it held answers he was still searching for. I watched him for a moment, marveling at the way he seemed both older and younger at the same time. Older from carrying so much alone, younger because tonight had stripped away all the pretenses he'd been forced to wear. I need to tell you everything, he said, voice hesitant but steady. I can't leave anything unsaid. I need you to really understand. I nodded, leaning forward slightly. I'm here, Thomas. I'm not going anywhere. He took a deep breath and began, his words flowing more freely now. It's complicated. I met them a few months ago, and at first it was just friendship. But then everything changed. I found myself thinking about them all the time. I wanted to be near them, to hear their voice, to see them smile. and I started feeling things I didn't think I could ever feel. I kept my gaze on him, letting him speak without interruption. The kitchen seemed smaller now, but in a comforting way, wrapping us in a cocoon where nothing outside mattered. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared, he admitted, voice dropping. Scared of what people might think, scared of how I'd feel if they didn't feel the same way, scared of admitting it to myself. But tonight, it all became unbearable. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't hide. His hands shook slightly as he clasped them together. I reached across the table again, placing my hand over his. Thomas, it's okay to be scared. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And admitting it, that's strength, the kind that matters. He looked at me then, eyes shimmering, and for a moment, the world outside the kitchen disappeared. You make me feel like it's okay to be me. All of me, even the parts I've been hiding. I don't know what I'd do without you right now. I smiled softly, feeling a warmth that wasn't just from the morning sun. You'll never have to find out. I'll be here. Whatever comes next, we face it together. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken emotion. Then, almost shyly, Thomas said, I want to be honest with you about something else too. About how I feel, about who I am. And I hope you'll still see me the same way. Thomas, I said, squeezing his hand gently, I see you. All of you. And I respect every part of you. Nothing you say can change that. He let out a shaky laugh, almost a sigh of relief. I've never told anyone like this before. Never anyone who really understood. He looked down at his hands, then back at me, eyes glistening with emotion. It's scary, but also freeing, like I'm finally letting myself breathe. The morning light seemed brighter now, warming the small kitchen, filling the space with hope. And in that quiet, tender moment, I realized how profound it was to witness someone embrace themselves, to hold space for their truth without judgment. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know what the future held or how his feelings would unfold. But we had each other, and for the first time in a long while, Thomas felt seen. Truly seen. And that, I realized, was sometimes all anyone really needed. Evening fell softly that day, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. The quiet hum of the neighborhood settled around the house, and inside, the air felt lighter, as if the weight of the night before had lifted just enough to let something new breathe. Thomas and I sat together on the sofa, the warmth of the room a gentle counterpoint to the cool breeze drifting through the open window. He seemed different now, not just lighter, but steadier. The fear that had shadowed his eyes for weeks had softened, replaced with a quiet determination I hadn't seen before. I've been thinking a lot today, he said, voice calm but thoughtful, about what I want and about what I need to do next. I nodded, giving him space to speak. Take all the time you need, Thomas. There's no rush. You've already taken the hardest step by being honest with yourself and with me. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that held relief and a little pride. I realized something important, that I don't have to have everything figured out right now. I can take things one step at a time, as long as I'm true to myself. And I can let people in, people I trust, without fear. I reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from his face, the gesture instinctive, maternal, and comforting. That's exactly it. Trusting yourself and trusting others. Those are the moments that make all the difference. Thomas leaned back, eyes drifting to the fading light outside. You know, I never expected that coming here at midnight would change everything. I thought I was running from something, but really I was running toward it. Toward understanding, and toward someone who would listen without judgment. I felt my chest tighten slightly, touched by the raw honesty in his words. Sometimes it only takes one night, one conversation, to shift the path you're on. You've done more than just face your fears. You've opened the door for the future you deserve." He laughed softly, the sound mingling with the distant rustle of leaves. "I feel lighter and braver, like I can finally take a deep breath without feeling guilty about who I am or who I care about." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the room and everything to do with witnessing Thomas's growth. And you can. You absolutely can. Life doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours, honestly and fully. For a while, we sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade and the first stars appear. The tension that had clung to him for so long had softened into something quiet and steady, a sense of possibility that hadn't existed before. And as I watched him, I realized that this night, this conversation had changed me too. I had discovered the depth of patience, empathy, and love that comes from truly listening to someone you care about. When Thomas finally stood to leave, he hugged me tightly, a hug full of gratitude, relief, and the promise of trust. "Thank you for being here, for understanding, for not letting me face this alone." "You'll never have to," I whispered. "Remember that." As I closed the door behind him, the night now completely still, I leaned against it for a moment, letting the quiet settle around me. I thought about the fear, the tears, the laughter, and the fragile courage of a young man finally embracing who he truly was. And I realized that sometimes the most unexpected visits, the most startling confessions, are the ones that teach us the most about connection, compassion, and growth. The world outside continued its ordinary rhythm, but inside, something extraordinary had happened. Two hearts had met in honesty, and for a night and a morning, we had both discovered the simple, profound power of being seen, and of seeing someone else. And as I finally sank into the calm of my living room, I smiled, knowing that the journey ahead, however uncertain, would never again feel quite so lonely.